Good morning, students. Welcome to day 8 training of this Talent Next. So, just a quick recap in a couple of minutes about what we have discussed in the last session, and let's get into today's topic. So, in the last class, we have covered the usage of abstract classes and interfaces, and we understood that a class can be declared abstract even if it doesn't have single abstract method. We understood the difference between the abstract method and a concrete method. We also understood that an abstract method can never be declared final, and also if a child class doesn't override at least one of the abstract method declared in the abstract class of the parent, then the child also to be declared as abstract. So we have seen all those things in the abstract classes concept, and then we have seen interfaces, and we understood that any variable declared inside an interface is treated to be by default public static final variable, and any method declared inside an interface is treated to be by default public abstract method. And that is the reason we have not used those keywords while writing the code. And also I have said you that extends keyword, if it is followed by a class name, we can only extend one single class. But the same extends keyword, if it is followed by a interface name, then it can extend any number of interfaces. And implements keyword can only be used with the class name, and implements you can follow it by any number of interfaces, and through this you are achieving multiple inheritance in Java. And before I have ended the session, I have shown you how from Java 8 onwards this default implementations or static implementations can also be used in interfaces. And the reason why we have two ways of implementations in interfaces is so that default methods can be overridden by the child classes, whereas static methods cannot be overridden by the child classes. And I also said you why this default methods or static methods is provided from Java 8 onwards, because if any method has to be added to the interface, and if there are thousands of classes which have been inherited from this interface, then you need to start adding body for all these thousands of classes. In order to overcome that, the default methods can be added so that whichever classes wishes to override that default implementation of the interface can override. Remaining classes can continue with their own implementations. That's the advantage. And static method is one method which is defined by interface that has to be accepted as it is by all the child classes. That means static methods can never be overridden by the child classes that were defined inside the interface. So all those things we have covered, and I said you that we are going to cover packages and exception handling in today's class. Let's begin with that. So straight away I'll open the Eclipse, and let me open the magnifier. So this is what yesterday we have seen interface, and yeah, one more point to be noted, which I haven't covered in the last session, is you cannot have. So here you can see this is illegal. Like here you are having an interface I1 default void M4. The same default void M4 is there in I2. Both of them can have this same method name, that same default implementation. But here the confusion arises when this interface I3 is extending I1 comma I2. Then the confusion arises because which M4 method has to be invoked when called. Whenever M4 is called, which interface M4 should be implemented. So this is not possible. So the default methods, when you are having, just observe, if I just remove here I1 I2, then there's nothing mistake. I hope you can observe, when I have this I2, you got this red cross mark indicating error, because default methods are there duplicate. Default methods are there with duplicate. So the compiler gets confuses which method to be invoked. So if I remove one, then there's no problem, because it clearly understands compiler that M3 is of I1. M3 is of I1 to be invoked. So this care also to be taken when default methods are being written in the interfaces. Here also the same error. Since I have written here I1 comma I2, the error is coming. If I just remove this I1, again there's no confusion. There you can see after I uh, deleted that I1, you can see no error. This is how. So when I have both I1 and I2, again the compiler confuses which M4 method to be included. Is it of I1 or I2? So when I just remove that I1, you can see the error is vanished. So this is one small point which I haven't covered in the last session. Just remember that. Now let's get into today's concepts. So we'll start understanding packages, how to create packages, and first point need to be noted is, in Java, every class or interface that you define will be part of some or the other package. I repeat, in Java, every class or interface that you define will be part of some or the other package. And if you are not defining any package, then by default, some special unnamed package, which we call it as default package, will be the place where all these classes or interfaces will be stored. But the underlying point here is, every class or interface will be part of some or the other package. If no package specified by the programmer, then a special unnamed package, which we call it as the default package, will be the place where these classes or interfaces will be stored. Now, why this concept of package? In simple, you can understand that this package is something like a folder in your computer machine. I hope you can understand by this term when I'm using. So, in simple, a package is just like a folder in your computer machine. So, whatever the classes I'm going to put in one single file, they all will be part of the same package. They all will be part of the same package. Now, just take this file which is on the screen as example. Here you can see that there is a class sample2, there is interface I1, there is interface I2, there is interface I3, there is class interface demo, and the file name is interface demo.java. The file name is interface demo.java. But altogether, this particular file is containing two classes and three interfaces. So all these two classes and three interfaces will be part of one single package, and that package is talent. Here I have used the package name as talent. This is the point I'm trying to tell. So all classes or interfaces of a file will be part of single package or the same package. All classes or interfaces that are part of a file will be present in same package. This point need to be understood. So 2 points I stated, that in Java every class or interface will be part of some or the other package. If no package specified, then a special unnamed package, which is known to be default package, will be the storage place for all these classes or interfaces. Next point what I just stated now is all classes or interfaces of a file will be part of same package. Just like in this case, as I just shown you, the file is interface demo.java. The file is interface demo.java and it contains two classes and three interfaces, which all of these five are part of the same package. In my case, talent. So this is the point need to be noted. Now, next question. What is the use of packages? The answer is simple. These packages avoid name clashes. These packages avoid name clashes. That means, suppose if I have a program like assume that if I have a program uh, Fibonacci.java, assume that I have a program Fibonacci.java, and I have written three varieties of Fibonacci code. I have written three varieties of Fibonacci code. The first one is uh, that uh, where the n value is provided in the code itself, where the n value is provided in the code itself. And I have written another piece of code where I am reading n value from command line argument. I have written another piece of code where I have written code such that n value is being read from some input dialog box which is provided externally. That means the same code but with three different varieties of way of reading the input. So I would like to name it as same Fibonacci.java and I want to put all these in the same folder. Is it possible? Definitely not. Definitely not, because name clashes arises. So in such case, what I can do is I can just have some packages with one package named as input within file, another package input from external source, another package with input from command line. This is how I can just name packages: input within file, input from external source, input from command line. Like this, I can just name different packages and I can put this same Fibonacci.java with accordance to the code which I have written. I hope all of you are understanding. So here the packages will avoid the name clashes. Packages will avoid name clashes so that you can just group the classes according to the category. You can group the classes according to the category and you won't get any name clashes. That's one of the advantage. And the other major advantage for going to packages is visibility control mechanism. The other important advantage for going this packages concept is visibility control mechanism. That means how far I want to show my classes or methods in other packages. That means you want to exhibit some of your classes to be known to everyone, and you want some of your classes to be known only to your siblings or family members, and you want some of your classes not to be known to anybody else other than your world. Something like this. You just understand what I am saying. So you want to restrict the visibility of your classes. That means few of them you want to make it available for everyone everywhere. Few of the classes you want to make it available for only your family members, I mean, like your children. Few of them you want it to be available for the entire community of yours where you belong to, and few of them you want to keep it confidential. Few of them you want to keep it confidential, that is not even known to your children. So this is the situation where packages come into picture. This is the situation where packages come into picture, and here we are going to discuss about the access specifiers: public, private, protected, and no access specifier, which we call it as default. So we have four access specifiers: public, private, protected, and default. We just discuss it but we don't write it explicitly. It's only in the interfaces which we have written default word. It's only in interfaces, that too prior Java 8 versions only, that explicit writing of default word also. Otherwise you are not even supposed to write the word default while you code. So I hope everyone following. Now let us create some classes in different packages and use these access specifiers, and then understand how they are restricted in the same packages or in different packages. So let's start creating a few packages and understand from that. In last session I have given you the overview of Eclipse, how you are going to create all that, how you are going to use. Now here I'm just expanding my source package, and here you can see src folder. So in my src folder I'm just doing right click and going for new, and then here you can see package. Just click on package, and then here give a name. So I'm just using the name pack 1. This is the name I'm just using, and click on finish. And now here you can see pack 1 is created, and only the color difference kind of thing what you can see is because it's blank. Since it is blank, you can just see some color difference there. And let us create one more package for better understanding of how this access specifiers are useful. And this one I'm just naming it as pack 2, and then click on finish. So now you can see two of the packages are created. And now right click on this pack 1 and just go for new, and I'm just creating a class, and this is let me name this as test, and let me just name this as test, and then go for finish. Now you can see the color has changed because this package is containing some classes. And here you can see, if you are not using IDE, if you are using normal notepad, then this is how you have to write. The very first statement should be package statement. Package is the keyword which you will be using, followed by the package name. Package space package name. This is how you will be using. And then after this package statement only, your import statements should also include. Whatever the import statements you will be writing, all that import statements also should be after the package statement only. And you can have only one single package statement followed by n number of import statements. I repeat, you can have only one single package statement followed by n number of import statements. So this point to be understood. Now just observe, I just created a package pack 1, and then in this I am creating a simple class. And what we'll do is, let's try to take a few variables like int a equal to some 10. Next, observe this, I haven't used any access specifier before this integer variable, integer declaration. So it's a default variable. It's a default variable. Next I am saying protected int b equal to 20. Next, private int c equal to some 30. And lastly, public int d equal to 40. Just observe this. So what I have done is, I have created a package with the name pack1, and then I just created a simple class, and this class is containing 4 instance variables. It is containing 4 instance variables. What are they? A equal to 10, b equal to 20, default variable a equal to 10, protected variable b equal to 20, private variable c equal to 30, public variable d equal to 40. Let us understand with example what this private, protected, public and default are useful for. As I said, the main advantage to go for packages is for visibility control mechanism. I said packages will be used for two uses. The first one to avoid name clashes, and the second important advantage is for visibility control mechanism. So how do you restrict that visibility control? Is using these access specifiers: public, private, protected, and no access specifier, which we are saying default. So for understanding that, what I have done is I have created two packages, pack 1 and pack 2. And the first one, what I am doing is, in pack 1 I am just creating a class test, and then this class test is containing four variables. One is the default variable, one is a protected variable, one is a private variable, one is a public variable. So this is what I have done so far. Now then what we will do is, one more class we will create. So one more class we will create in this, and then I'll just name this as test2. Let's just name this as test2. And what I'll do is, I'll just make this test2. Let me close the previous files so that you can see. So here there is a test class which is part of pack 1, and one more class I created, test2, which is also part of pack 1. And then what I'll be doing is, here I'll just extend test1. Oh, sorry, only test. I haven't named it test1. So observe this. So this test2 class is child of this test class. So this test2 class is child of this test class. Now what I will do is, I'll create one more class, and let's just name this test3. So it's not having any relation with test. This is not having any relation with test. Observe this difference. So carefully observe. I have created a package with the name pack1, and then I created three classes named as test, test2, and test3. And all these three classes are in same package, that is pack1. And coming to the relationships, test is the parent of test2 class, and test3 is not having any relationship test or test2. Now here in test2, if you see, I'm just writing the main method, and then what I'll do is, I'll just try to access them. I can't okay, they are not declared to be static. So we already know that only static variables can be directly used in the static methods, since main is static here. Otherwise I have to create object and then I have to use it. So what I'll do is, I'll just create an object for this test2 class. Test2 ob equal to new test2, and then here, instead of calling it directly, since it's not a static variable, I'm just using ob.a. So there you can see the error is gone. And now what we'll do is, similarly we'll try to access and see if it is possible to access the remaining variables or not. So ob.a, ob.b, ob.c, ob.d. Once again I'm saying, so here we have three classes under same package: test, test2, test3, and the relationship is test2 is the child of test class, and test3 is having no relationship with test class. And in test class I have just declared four variables: one default variable, that is a; one protected variable, that is b; one private variable, that is c; one public variable, that is d. And what I am doing is, in test2 class, which is a child of test class, I am just trying to access all these four variables that were defined in test class. Now you can see what is happening. So ob.a, it's fine. Here, when you are trying to access the variable a, it's working fine, because this is what need to be understood. So what is the category of a? It's a default variable. Here a is a default variable. So default variable can be accessed in the child class of the same package. Default variable can be accessed in the child class of the same package. Next, you are trying to access b, there is no error. Again, understand it. So here, what is the category of b? B is a protected variable. So protected variable, protected variable, not only variable, understand it, member. That's better to understand rather than saying variable. Protected members. When we say members, it can be either a variable or a method. When we say member, it can be either variable or a method. So protected member can be accessed by the subclass in the same package. Protected member can be accessed in the subclass in the same package. Now, coming to C, what is the category of C? So C is a private variable. Understand this carefully. C is a private variable. So private variables are confidential. They are not known outside the class. So even to the child. That's the error here, you can see. When I move my mouse cursor over there, you can see test.c is not visible. You can see test.c is not visible because C is a private variable which cannot be known to the child also, even in the same package. Even in the same package. So private members are not visible outside the class. Whereas coming to D, you can see it's a public variable. So there's nothing wrong here. There's nothing wrong here. Don't bother about the outputs. I'm not interested to display and show you the outputs. I'm just trying to explain you how the visibility control is provided with the concept of packages with the usage of access specifiers. So here the point to be noted is default variables can be accessed by the child in the same package. Protected variables can be accessed by the child in the same package. Public variables can be accessed by the child in the same package. Private variables cannot be accessed even by the child, even in the same package. This is the point to be noted here. I hope everyone understood. Now, coming to next, I'll just copy the same code and I'll just paste it in test 3. So in test 3, again you can see this test 3 is not a child of test. This test 3 is not a child of test. But when you are creating object for test, it's possible because it is in the same package. It is in the same package. So when you are creating object for a class in the same package, even though it's not having any relationship, it is possible, just like what you can see here. So test 3 is not a child of test class, but still you are able to create object for this test class from test 3 because they belong to same package. Because they belong to same package. Now coming to the access, here you can see ob.a. That means the default variable can be accessed even from a non subclass in the same package. Observe this, the default variable can be accessed even from a non subclass in the same package. Next, coming to ob.b, that is a protected variable. So a protected variable can be accessed from a non subclass in the same package. A protected variable can be accessed from a non subclass in the same package. Coming to private, obviously it's going to raise error because it's not known to the child itself. How can it be known to the non subclass? So this will be error. Now coming to the last one, public. So we know public means, the name itself makes us understand its scope is public, which it can be known to everyone. Which it can be known to everyone. So this is the point you must understand. So the default variables can be accessed by both subclasses and non-subclasses in the same package. I repeat, the default members can be accessed by both subclasses and non-subclasses in the same package. Next, coming to protected members. Protected members can be accessed by subclasses and non-subclasses in the same package. Protected members can be accessed by both subclasses and non-subclasses in the same package. Next, private. Private members cannot be accessed by subclasses or non-subclasses in the same package. Private members cannot be accessed both subclasses and non-subclasses even though they are in the same package. And lastly, public members can be accessed by subclasses or non-subclasses in the same package. So this is the takeaway from this particular demonstration what I have just shown you. So this is how you will be restricting the access, and so far what you have just seen is in the same package. Now what I will do is, similarly I'll just create two more classes in pack 2. I'll just create two more classes in pack 2. Let us name that as test4. So test4 is created, and one more class I'll just create test5. So two more classes I just created, but observe the difference. So here test4 and test5 are the classes in pack 2, that is package 2, whereas the test and test2, test3 are part of this pack 1. Now what I'll do is, here test4 I'll just write extends test. Observe this. Here test2, how it is child of test class. Similarly test4 also I am making it as a child of test class, but with the difference that test2, which is a subclass of test class, belonging in the same package, but test4, which is being a subclass in a different package. This point to be noted here. Test4 is also a subclass of test class, but it is in different package. Since it is in different package, you cannot directly write test like this. You have to import test from the pack 1. You can see in the fixes, import test pack 1. This is how you will automatically get it with IDE. Otherwise you just need to write it manually. Import pack 1, that is package name dot test, that is the class name. So this is how you will be writing import statement. So import package name dot class name. If you don't know the class name exactly, you can even write star. You can even write star like this, where star indicates all, but in real time company people will never encourage you to write star at any point, because when you write star, indirectly you are including all the classes of that package, even though you might be using one single class from that package, letting the compiler take time for translating, for generating the bytecode. So for that reason, in real time, no company will encourage you to use this star in the import statement. Remember that. Now here you can see public class test4 extends test, and this test is present in pack 1. That's what you can see when I move here, pack1 dot test. But when I see in test2, you don't see that. I mean, you don't need to write that. Here you can see. Now again what I'll do is, I'll just copy this same. So let me just copy this code, Control C, and in test4 I'm just pasting it, Control S. Now here you can see few more errors. So what are they? Here what are we doing? We are trying to create object for test class, which is in pack 1. It's working fine. Next, A. What is the type of, category of A? It's a default variable. So this is the proof that default variable will not have visibility outside the package. Default variables will not have visibility outside the package. So default members scope is only within the package. Default members scope is only within the package. That is the reason here you are getting this error. Here you are getting this error. Next, coming to this B. What is this B? B is a protected variable. B is a protected variable. Okay. So protected variable is also not having visibility in other package, even though it is a subclass. Even though it is a subclass. Next, coming to private, definitely private will not have its scope outside the class itself. So how come even if it is a child in other package? So that's the error you can see here. And next, coming to D, which is a public variable which will have its scope definitely outside the package. And now, just for your understanding, suppose if I just remove here the access specifier public, if I remove the access specifier public, you can see, even in test 4 now it is raising error. Why? Because test which is not even declared to be public cannot be seen in other package. That's what all these errors which you can see here. That's what all these errors what you can see here. It's not visible. So it's mandatory to have the members which you want to be visible, or the classes which you want to create objects in other packages as declared public. Remember this point. And all the predefined classes what we see are declared public. Maybe some of the methods inside them may be protected. Like yesterday we have seen one of the method like finalize method in the last classes, which is in the object class. So remember, all the predefined classes in Java are declared public, but some of the methods might be protected. Some of the methods might be protected, but all the classes will be declared public so that you can create objects for those classes from anywhere. So this is the point to be noted. Here you can see now when I have declared public test, so it's working fine. You can create object for it. So default members visibility is not going to be there outside the package. Default members visibility is not going to be there outside the package. And coming to private, private member scope will not be there even for the subclasses in the same package. Private member scope will not be there even for the subclasses in the same package. And next, public members will have scope everywhere. Public members will have scope everywhere. And protected members, you can have scope in the subclasses and non subclasses of the same package. Now if I just copy the same code in test 5, here you can see now what is happening. So again with the test 5 it's the same. Just hold on a second. Actually this B should be working fine here because it is declared protected, and protected members can be accessed by the children anywhere. Actually protected members can be accessed by the children anywhere. So that's what I'm just pausing while explaining you here. Why is it not getting access? I'm just checking that. So the point to be noted is default members will be visible only within the package. Protected members will be visible by children in the same package or in the other package. Actually, this is what the point to be noted. And coming to the what is that, non subclasses. Non subclasses can access only the public members from other package. This is what only the public members can be accessed. Okay, so this is the takeaway from this particular packages concept. Where is that packages concept? Here it is. And one more thing which I wanted to introduce you is there is one concept called static import which can be used. So suppose if I'm writing here, just observe, if I'm writing here import static java dot lang dot system dot star. Suppose if I'm writing like this we call it as static import. This we call it as static import. So when you use this static import, the advantage what you have is you can ignore the static members access without writing the name. Like here, system is a static class in lang package. System is a static class in lang package. So what I can do is I can just remove this system word here. It works fine. Since I have written static import in the top, here you can see instead of writing system.out.println, I can just use out.println itself because I have used static import. This is one of the advantage with static import. So it's possible only for the static classes import. It's possible only for the static classes import, so that you can ignore the writing the class name also. You can ignore writing the class name also. That's the advantage with the static import. So this is one point I would like to tell you. And now here coming to this introduction to packages. So we have covered this. Yeah, this is what I said. If you just create a package, by default it's like a folder in your system. And here you can see this is what the access specifiers visibility. So private accessible in the same class only. Private is accessible only in the same class, not even outside the uh, class. Even for the subclass it's not accessible. So that's the point need to be noted. And coming to default, here you can see default is accessible for both subclasses and non subclasses in the same package. Default is accessible for subclasses and non subclasses in same package. And coming to protected, here you can see subclasses or non subclasses in same package and subclasses in other packages. So this is the point need to be understood. So in addition to default, protected has the privilege of subclasses having access in other packages also, whereas default only subclasses and non subclasses in the same package. So this is the point which I am trying to see in that code. Later I'll just check it. So subclasses and non subclasses in same package can access, along with subclasses in other packages can also have access. Coming to public everywhere. Coming to public everywhere. This is the point to be noted. So this table you should be familiar with, and that's what I have just demonstrated with this code. So actually in this test 4, since it is a subclass for test class in pack 1, this B should be accessible. That's what I'm just checking. In test class, we just created B as protected. So protected variables will be accessible by the children. But here it is not being accessible. Even though we are creating objects for the test class, B it is saying not visible. Okay, then anyway, I'll just check this later, and in tomorrow's class, I'll just let you know what might be the reason. So if I use static, I don't think it will be the reason, because even though if it is static also, only thing is by using static, I can just, okay, it got resolved. But actually, only static will just change with so that I can just use with the class name. That's the only thing. So it's coming. Anyway, but just remember the fact that protected members are accessible by subclasses in other package also. Default members are accessible by everyone in the same package. Private members are not accessible by even the subclasses in the same package. Public members can be accessible by anyone, anywhere. These are the takeaway points from this packages concept. So now we'll move on to exception handling. I hope everyone understood this packages concept now. So one more point which I just explained you is static import. The advantage with static import is you can ignore the usage of the class name if you include it in the static. If you include it as static import, and this is possible only for importing static classes. Underline point here. As you can see, I have ignored writing system dot, since I have written here import static java.lang.system. So this is the advantage of static import, and this static import is also introduced only from Java 5 or higher versions, not before that. The static import also included only from Java 5 or higher versions and not before that. So these are the points to be noted. So protected members are accessible by subclasses and non-subclasses in same package and subclasses in other package. Default members are accessible by subclasses and non-subclasses in same package. Public members are accessible by everyone in every package. Private members are not accessible even outside the class. So these are the takeaway points from this packages concepts. Now let me get back to my regular talent package, and let's create a small piece of code, and from that we will understand the exception handling. So here I'll just write this as exception demo. So in this, what we'll just do is let's just create a small piece of code, and here what we'll do is so we'll just say int a comma b. Okay, otherwise let me straight away write int okay, sys out control space args of 0 divided by args of 1. Okay, since we know that args of 0 will be string, that is command line argument, so that's the reason it is just raising that error. So what I'll do is I'll just take a variable int a equal to integer dot parseInt of. So here I'll just use this args of 0, control X, and here I'll just replace it. And similarly, let's use one more variable, control V, and here instead of writing this args of 1 like this, what we'll do is we'll write A by B, and here replace this B. So now you can see there's no compile time error here. I mean, there's no compilation mistake. Let me close these files so that you can see the file name here. So here you can just see I just created a small class, named it as exception demo, and in that main method I've just used two variables, and I'm using command line arguments args of 0 and args of 1, and those two command line argument values I'm just copying into A and B respectively, and I'm just displaying the uh, quotient, that is the division operation result. So it's a very small piece of code, but when I just okay, let us add few more statements here. Sys out control space, and after division, and then just assume that this after division operation you have a few more statements like that. So your code is still long enough, but here when I just write some piece of code like this, and when I just run this without giving that command line arguments, what happens is, okay, console is missing. Okay, proceed. Okay, here you can see this, we call it as exception. So in simple, exception is an abnormal situation that arises during the execution flow of your program, which terminates if not handled. This is what the definition. So exception is an abnormal situation that arises during the execution of your program. If not handled, it terminates the program by just displaying the stack trace. So here what is happening is array index out of bounds exception occurred. What is this array index out of bounds exception? So it is expecting two arguments and no argument is passed. That is the reason it is just giving that information, and then it is giving the error message, and the program got terminated. Suppose, okay, let us give that values. Let us give that values now. We have seen in previous sessions how to give command line arguments. So I'm just giving like some values 4 and 2. Just give 4 and 2, and then simply apply and close. Now if I just run this piece of code, so here you can see the result 2 is displayed, and after division statement is also got displayed. Now suppose let's modify the argument. Suppose if I am modifying the argument now as 0, and then if you just apply and close. So here you can see now it's not giving array index out of bounds, because whatever the expected arguments are they required, that you are passing it, but you are getting a division by 0. So the point is, whatever the exception that is occurred, immediately the program gets terminated. So this is not uh, allowed in real-time application. So for that reason, what we need to do is, whatever the code we are writing, we should be knowing what are the possible exceptions that this particular piece of code written by you, and you should be dealing with all possible exceptions. Like here you have seen so far, one is arithmetic exception, which is division by 0, what you have just seen now. And the other one is array index out of bounds exception, which is not handled, that means if no arguments were specified. And another exception which also is possible here is, suppose if I just open the configurations, and if I just change the arguments to something like a and b, and then apply, close, and then here control s, and then if I just run as Java application and then click on proceed. Now here you can see one more type of exception, that is number format exception, because it is expecting integer, because that is the reason you have written here integer dot parseInt. You are trying to convert whatever the command line argument given by you to integer, and then storing it in integer variable. But what we have provided there, a and b, normal characters. So that's the reason it is giving number format exception. So if you observe in a small piece of code what we have just written here, in this only we got we have seen three different varieties of exceptions. Number format exception, if the format whatever is expected is not in number, we get this number format exception. Array index out of bounds exception, if the required number of arguments are not provided, we get this array index out of bounds exception. And another one is arithmetic exception, which division by 0, where the what do you say, this b value here, this is the dividend and this is the divisor. If the divisor is 0, then you get this arithmetic exception. So being a programmer, what you should be familiar with is, you not only understand how to write code, but you also must know what are the possible kinds of exceptions that may arise with the code written by you, and then deal with all such exceptions, so that even if any of the uh, exception that you expected have occurred, your program should handle that, and the remaining piece of program should continue to execute, rather than the program getting terminated abruptly. So this is the point to be noted here. So here the thing need to be understanding by everyone is, not only knowing how to write code, but also should know how to handle the exceptions. So that's what you should be knowing. And here what we have to do is, we need to handle such exceptions. And for doing this exception handling, we use 5 keywords. Let's first see the theory part and then come back to the code. And here yeah, this is the exception handling. And here you can see, this is the definition. Exception is an event that occurs during the execution of a program that disrupts the normal flow of instructions. So for that, what you have to do is, you need to take corrective measures and continue execution. That's what we call exception handling. What are the different situations where an exception can occur? So when you are trying to access a file which doesn't exist in the machine, or you are trying to insert an element into an array which is not within the bounds, or you are performing some arithmetic operations which is not permitted, just like what we have seen, or you are declaring some negative values in the array. So these are some basic examples, and these are the different types of exceptions that frequently occurs in uh, normal programming. Null pointer exception, number format exception. So null pointer exception, generally it occurs when you try to refer any object or string which is initialized to null, then you get a null pointer exception. That means you are trying to access an object which is initialized to null. That's when you can get null pointer exception. Number format exception, just now I have shown you with example. So I'm trying to perform integer dot parseInt, and instead of giving a integer there, I'm giving a character, so which cannot be converted to integer. So there you can get number format exception. Array index out of bounds exception also just now we have seen. That means when you are trying to access something out of its bounds, then you get this array index out of bounds exception. String index out of bounds exception is also similar to array index, except with the difference that with the string array. Arithmetic exception also we have just seen now. That is we are performing some arithmetic operation where the divisor is being 0, and you are getting that division by 0. So these are the typically encountered exceptions during programming. Now how do you avoid them? Simple, by handling them. How do you avoid them? By handling them. How to handle the exceptions? How to handle the exceptions? So the exceptions can be handled by using 5 keywords. These are the keywords, exception handling keywords we call them. So Java's exception handling is managed using the following keywords: try, catch, throw, throws, and finally. These are the 5 keywords through which we will be handling exceptions. So coming to try, what you place in try is whatever the code you expect that might cause some exception. Whatever the code that you expect that might cause some exception, that code you will be writing inside try block. And since you have already expected that your code might be throwing certain kind of exceptions, those exceptions you can handle with the catch block. Those exceptions you can handle with the catch block. So catch, type of exception, and then if that expected exception which you placed in try is encountered during the execution of program, then this particular catch block will be handling that exception. So you can place that code in the catch block. And then finally block. So finally is one block which gets executed whether the program successfully executes or terminates. Whether the program successfully executes or terminates. So this finally is very important in real time programming, because you need to perform such operations which you want it to be mandatorily performed irrespective of the successful execution of the program. Such code you are going to place in finally block. Example statements what you are going to place in finally block is, suppose I am creating a JDBC program, and then I have opened the connection and I have created a statement. And in normal flow of execution, generally what you do, you will be closing the connection as well as the statement in the last. That means when your program is about to finish, in the last statements you will be including the close of the database connection and the close of the statement object. But what in case if some exception occurred before completing the last statement's execution, then immediately the control will jump to the respective catch handling block, and then it will never come back to the code. It will never come back to the code. So in that case we are not getting the opportunity to perform the close of database connection or the close of statement which you have opened. So such statements generally what we will be doing in real time is we will be placing them in finally block. We will be placing them in finally block. So this is the point you need to understand. So what you place inside try is you will place all the code that you expect it might cause some exception, and whatever the exception you expected, if it occurs, then what should take place, that you will be writing in the respective catch blocks, that you will be writing in respective catch blocks. And then finally is one block which gets executed whether exception occurs or not occurs. Whether exception occurs or not occurs, finally is the block that gets executed all the time. So that's what you will be using finally block for. And the point to be noted here is, if any exception occurs in the try block, immediately the control jumps to the respective catch block, and control will never come back to try block again. This is the point to be understood. So if an exception occurred in between somewhere in the try block, then the control immediately jumps to the appropriate catch block, and once the catch block is executed, then the control will never come back to try block. So the execution resumes immediately after the next statement or after all catch blocks. After all catch blocks. When I am saying after all catch blocks, you must be understanding that a try can be associated with n number of catch blocks. For a single try block, you can have n number of catch blocks, because inside try you are writing some code which you are expecting different types of exceptions. For each type of exception, you can have one catch block. That is the reason for a single try you can have n number of catch blocks. But one more important point to be noted here is, if an exception is occurred in the try block, then the corresponding catch block will be executed and the control will not go back to try block. That means only one single catch block gets executed. You might be writing n number of catch blocks, but since exception will be occurred with one particular kind of statement in the try block, so once the exception occurs, the corresponding catch block will be executed and control will not go back to try block. So that's the reason I'm saying only one single catch block will be executed for if any try code raises exception, and immediately after the catch block executed, the remaining catch blocks are bypassed. The remaining catch blocks are bypassed, they are skipped simply, and the execution resumes from the immediate next statement that follows all the catch blocks, that follows all the catch blocks. And another important point to be noted here is, after you end this try block, you can't have even a single statement written before writing the catch block. It should be immediate. It should be immediate. I mean, after you have written this try block, immediately after that you should have your catch blocks started, and you can define n number of catch blocks, as I said, for each type. For each type of the catch block, you can define n number of catch blocks, and you can't have even a single statement written in between this try block and catch block. This is another point. And one more point, you can have you can have try block even without catch. You can have try block even without catch, but at least finally block should be there. That's what here the color differences you can see in this manual. So you can have try block, but at least you should have finally block. So you can have try only with catch or finally. You can have try only with catch or finally. Remember this point. You can have try only with catch or finally, and you can have one single catch block or n blocks, I mean n catch blocks, but you cannot have catch without try. You cannot have catch without try. You cannot have finally without try. Remember these points. You cannot have catch without try block. You cannot have finally block without try block. You can have try block without catch by having finally block. These are the points to be noted with regard to this try, catch, and finally. And coming to throw and throws. So throw and throws, I'll just demonstrate you with example, this throw keyword and throws keyword, how they are useful in the exception handling. Just remember this for time being. And yeah, exception handling types. What are the different types of exceptions? So let's quickly understand the types of exceptions and the exception hierarchy. Let's cover this theoretical part. So this is what the hierarchy of exceptions. Throwable class. You have this throwable class, which is the supermost class for all the types of exceptions. So this throwable class having two subclasses, one error class, the other one exception class. And error class is not in your control, whereas exception class can be handled. So error class example is out of memory error. That means you are continuously running applications, and through your applications you are continuously generating so many objects, or some runtime allocations are being created by you, where the heap memory gets full, and you are not even giving enough time for the JVM's garbage collector to be run to clear off any unused objects, and thereby you get this error, out of memory error. So in that case, it's not in your control, and you can do nothing about it except giving some time for JVM to erase the unused references from the heap memory. I hope everyone is understanding what is out of memory error. I'm just trying to give an example when you get this out of memory error. So out of memory error you will be getting when the heap memory is full, and you are continuously creating objects, or some runtime allocations are being created by you, where the heap is full and there is no enough space for the new allocations. In such cases you can do nothing. Only thing what you can do is just wait for some time and restart the application, so that JVM will be running the garbage collector meanwhile, and making some memory available for you. That's it. That's what the out of memory error. That's what I said. It's out of the control of the programmer. Whereas exceptions, they can be handled by the programmer. That's what. Now exceptions are of two types: checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. So checked exceptions are those which must and should be handled by the programmer. Checked exceptions are those which must and should be handled by the programmer, else it will raise compile time error. It will raise compile time error. On the other hand, runtime unchecked exceptions are those which will not be checked during compile time. Unchecked exceptions are those which are not checked during compile time. The best example is, for checked exception, you can take here in the manual you can see SQL exception is one of the checked exception. The other example is file not found exception. So you are trying to uh, open some file, so it has to be handled during the programming itself. What if whatever the file specified by you is not found? So that's what you get, file not found exception. So it is a checked exception. Compulsory you should include what if the file is not found. That's what file not found exception. That's also a checked exception. So you have like that several checked exceptions which must and should be handled, which must and should be handled like that. And SQL exception, what you can see here is another kind of checked exception. So this is what. And coming to unchecked exception example, here you can see in the manual null pointer exception. Another example which I can give you is also arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception, and one more exception which you can understand is number format exception, which will not be checked during compile time. That's why in the earlier case, whichever piece of code I have written, the exception demo class, I have I don't have any compilation errors. Happily, I was able to run the program. Only after running the program, I have seen some exception being occurred. But coming to checked exception, it's not like that. Compulsory, you must and should handle all the checked exceptions in your code. If not handled, you will be able to see compilation errors only. Unchecked exceptions are those which will not be checked during compilation, so you can leave them if you are not sure. If you are not sure, you can leave them. But if they occur, then the JVM's uh, handler will catch it and then print the stack trace. What is that print stack trace? I'll explain you in my next session. So this is what the exception in a nutshell. That is, throwable is the supermost class for this exception hierarchy, which has two subclasses, error class and exception class. Error class, which contains all the different types of errors, and they are not in the programmer's control, whereas the exception class can be handled by the programmer. And exceptions are of two types: checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Checked exceptions are those which must and should be handled during programming, else compilation errors occur. Unchecked exceptions are those which will not be checked during compile time, and if not handled, then when occurred during the execution, the JVM's default handler catches it, and then the print stack trace message will be displayed and program gets terminated. So this is all about the types of exceptions, and here you can see the exception hierarchy. Exception having subclasses: runtime exception, IO exception, and out of memory exception. Again, under runtime exception you have this what do you say, yellow color kind of thing: array index out of bounds exception, arithmetic exception, class cast exception, null pointer exception. And checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Yeah, here you can see file not found exception. This is what I said. So file not found exception is another example for checked exception. When you are dealing with files, you must and should handle file not found exception. So this is one of the example for checked exception. And here you can see the example. All the checked exceptions are in yellow color: IO exception, SQL exception, interrupted exception. These are some of the examples of checked exceptions. And unchecked exceptions that are not checked during compile time. Again, here you can see in yellow color, all these subclasses of runtime exception are by default unchecked exceptions. All the subclasses of runtime exception are by default unchecked exceptions. And yeah, error, as I said, it's not in the control of programmer. So one such error is out of memory error, that is heap memory is full. And another error example also is here: stack overflow error. This is also not in the control of programmer. So whatever the reference variables that you are going on creating, if the stack is full. Another where place where you can get the stack overflow error is if you are performing recursion. If you are performing some recursion operation, and you are not including any terminating condition, there also you can get this stack overflow error, because all the function calls will be stored in the stack. All the function calls will be stored in the stack, and then there comes a situation where the stack gets full. And you haven't included any terminating condition. You haven't included any terminating condition. In such case, you can get this stack overflow error. That's one of the example. Yeah, here you can see, this is what the example I'm trying to tell. So here it's already given an example where you can see uh, a function recursive print is there, and then you are just writing this recursive print of plus plus number, and there is no terminating condition. There is no terminating condition, like if number is 0, you are returning. Otherwise, you are going on incrementing the number and you are calling the function, and this function calls will be using stack. And here there is no terminating condition, because the numbers go on incrementing and then the function is being called. If you run this application in your IDE and just wait for some time, immediately you will be getting the program gets halted by displaying this exception: java.lang.stack overflow error. So this is what these are the examples of error: stack overflow error or out of memory error when the heap memory is full. And from that above yellow highlighted color, you can just map which of these exceptions fall under checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. And then yeah, here match the following. Here you can see integer a array is only declared but not even created. Observe the point, because when you don't initialize the array, or when you don't use new int of some size being specified, the array doesn't get created. Here you only declaration is made, but you are trying to do this a of 0 equal to 0. So what you will be getting, I hope you can understand. you will be getting this compile time error. You will be getting this compile time error. And next, JVM starts running your program, but the JVM can't find the required Java classes. This is a straightaway answer, class not found exception. Here it's a straightaway answer for B bit. So class not found exception will occur there. Next, a program is reading a stream and not yet reached the end of stream marker. So there won't be any exception. You don't get any exception there. So it just continues to read and just waits there. That's it. There won't be any exception. And next, file not found exception we just discussed. So it's a checked exception. So this is what the match the following. Yeah, that's it. So this is what the basic understanding of exception handling. And just remember for time being that exception handling can be handled in Java by using the 5 keywords: try, catch, finally, throw, throws. These are the 5 keywords which we use to deal with exception handling in Java. And try block, we will place the code with that we expect an exception might be occurred. And then catch block, we write the code which is required for handling the exception if it occurs. And finally block, we write to make sure that the statements that we keep in finally gets executed whether exception occurs or not. And remember the fact, these are the only 3 blocks. Throw and throws are not blocks, and you cannot have try without catch or finally. So try must and should have at least one catch or finally, and try can have n number of catch blocks, and you cannot have catch without try. You cannot have finally without try. These are the points which I have discussed. And just now we have completed this exception hierarchy and types of exceptions. We understood about checked and unchecked exceptions. So let's stop here, and in next class I'll show all the usages with execution. In yeah, tomorrow and day after tomorrow you will not be having class. You will be having class again on Monday. So in Monday's class I'll show the usage of all these 5 keywords: try, catch, throw, throws. I'll show the usage of all these 5 keywords with assessment point of view. How you can get questions, all that I'll just show with the demonstration. So that's all for today. If you have any queries, you can post it in the comment section. Else, you can start posting your roll numbers in the comment section. If you have any queries, post it in the comment section. Else, you can start posting your roll numbers in the comment section. I'll wait for 2 minutes. Start giving your attendance. Any queries also can be posted. Okay. Uh, I hope everyone have given your roll numbers. I have seen Pawan Kalyan answering this child class reference only should be used rather than using the sub class, I mean parent class. Let's just try that once. So in pack 2 of test 4, so I have to use test 4 he mentioned. Let's just try that very quick. Ob dot, and here instead of using static also, let me just replace it with normal. So here let me remove the static, control yes. So even if I'm using the same thing, it's not coming. Suppose if I just make it with a test, but still the same. So test 4 is anyway subclass of test. But still, if you see here, when I'm creating object for the test or test 4, the answer is same. So that's what Pawan Kalyan. I'll just check it once and let you know. But when I'm using static, it's coming. When I'm just using static, it is coming. I have seen your answer, but still you can see when I'm using only static, it's working fine. Here you can see. Now when I use static, the error is resolved. So the object, whether you are creating it for a base class or subclass, it doesn't matter. Anyway, but you remember the fact that subclass from other package also can access the protected members. Thanks for the reply, Pavan Kalyan. Okay, let's wind up for today and meet on Monday's class. Bye.